My name is Rachel Evans. I'm a web coordinator and digital media specialist at UGA School of Law. And over the summer, we did a web redesign where we had a chance to upgrade our site from Drupal 6 to 7, and also just a chance to kind of revisit the way we were handling some of the material on our site. So first, I want to let you know a little summary about what I'm going to talk about. There's going to be a brief introduction and background to let you know why we made these changes. Give you some reasons why we wanted to make things easier. 2 specific examples that we're going to use, course offerings and scholarship and writing opportunities that we use this method with specifically. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of that. I'm also going to give you a list of the modules needed, and you'll see on the handout, and if you didn't get a handout, there's a stack of them right in the back, and that gives you a list, including links where you can download the modules that you'll need. Most of the modules are in core. If you're using Drupal 8, all but one will be in core, so you don't need a lot to get this done, and you may already have the modules installed because they're pretty basic. I'm also going to give you the 10 steps that it'll take to do this, and then we'll walk through slides with screen caps that show you exactly how we did this step by step. And then I'm going to give some general tips for generating buy-in with your own colleagues as to making the case for this type of method, and open up for a few questions. So to begin, Drupal does amazing things. That's why we're here at Drupal Camp. That's why a lot of people use it. That's why people in higher education are using it, because it's a really great system for managing content. The idea of using modules in combination with other modules to create new ways of presenting information and organizing that information reminds me personally of synthesizers. I play synthesizers, so I think of modular systems as being like sound. So, Drupal can be like the equivalent of synthesizers that they are to sound as modules in Drupal for web content. So just a little bit of background. Web editors, this is one of my jobs. A lot of my colleagues, we all do this. We're always editing things. Sometimes this can get really time-consuming. In a complicated website for higher education, we have a lot of pages that just have a lot of dense content, and there's not a great way to view it. A lot of it's necessary, but it doesn't look really pretty on the screen. Managing large websites, content management can make this easier, so that's one reason Drupal was the reason we chose that system. UGA School of Law has been using it since 2009, so we're not new to Drupal, but when we originally had it designed, there was a company that came in and built the site, so we didn't have complete control over every little thing. And when we did the redesign over the summer, that was just a great opportunity to say, these are some areas that they looked okay, but we weren't using Drupal the way that we really, that it's meant to be used. We were using views on some pages. We were using taxonomies with some content, mainly for like news and events, but we weren't using it for basic content like course offerings. So we were using it we were using those features for like our outward persona of people and the public face, but not for our students who are our main audience. So that was one way that we wanted to take the upgrade as an opportunity to improve those parts of the website. We knew there was a lot of room for improvement, so my biggest concern when we were approaching the upgrade was there are a couple of places where I know that we can make this easier for students, easier for ourselves, and we'll be using Drupal the way it's supposed to be used, and not using just endless lists. And I'll show you examples of the before and after of what it looked like and how annoying it could be as a student or faculty member going to this content and just having to endlessly scroll to search for something. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you won't find it as easily. So we wanted to improve that. 2 of these pages, course offerings, which I already mentioned, and external scholarships. And external scholarships it wasn't as bad of a situation, but it was pretty close. And the more that I got into revising this, I found out that the situation was actually worse. It wasn't just an issue of it being on the website in an unpleasant way, but there was similar information for current students in a physical book somewhere in the law school where students are supposed to know to go to this tiny corner and look through this physical book for opportunities. And it wasn't used very well because people didn't know where it was. And some of these opportunities were the same. So external scholarships was about to become scholarship and writing opportunities. So why revise? Again, these pages are really dense. They were just very long lists of information. There was no easy way to sort through it, to filter it, and that's something that Views does very simply and very easily. So why weren't we using it that way? The course offerings page, again, this one, it was one, but it was actually 2 pages. We had always kept a list of alphabetical and numerical. And again, that's something that Views can sort very easily. It's very easy to set up, and for some reason, we weren't using it. We were physically going in and ordering these alphabetically and numerically. As you can assume, there was a lot of room for error, with a lot of different hands touching this information. External scholarships page was directed towards prospective students, and that physical book I mentioned was directed towards current students. But again, some of the opportunities were the same. So we're duplicating information, we're duplicating staff work, which was needless. So before and after of course offerings. This is a little video clip that I want to show you of what these pages looked like. So you can see this version isn't live anymore on our website, but this is what this doesn't make us look very good. If you're a current student and you go and you're trying to look for a class this is the list that they send you to look for a class that you want to sign up for. So this goes on forever. And again, it's so simple and it's so easy to think that there's a better way to do this. People have been doing this a better way for years, so why weren't we doing that? This video goes on. Let me fast forward. You can see edit mode. This is in the other version, the alphabetical list. It's exactly the same information, and the staff are having to update this in 2 places. Again, a lot of room for error. So
data like in Drupal in the new site, or was some of it external and being imported?
It was all just input by hand. We had different staff members. There were multiple people, including the registrar herself, who were going in and touching it. And in our upgraded site, we cut back on the number of people who are touching the website because a lot of things like this we improved so that we don't need that many hands touching it. And they love it. They don't like touching the website. So we love making their job easier. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we switched to this. So the after shot, I'm going to take you to the live website now just to show you the difference between the 2. So this is what it looks like now. Not only is it a little more pleasant to look at, again, you do still have a long list, but we've included a pager so it doesn't go on forever. The best part is that we've added a taxonomy for course types, so that little block that you saw at the top that was kind of ugly, an ugly little table of first year courses, now you can just sort for those, and it's just going to show you those first year courses. If you're just looking for electives, a student could search for that. To make those staff happy that really like to see things just by the course number, which we call the jury number, you can sort by that. So this is just making it easier for a lot of people. Another big change is that we have two new degrees that weren't there originally that have become a bigger part of the school. So not only do we offer the JD now, we have the LLM and the MSL. They offer slightly different courses, and they hope to continue to expand that. So this is also designed to give them exactly the courses that they need, something that was not previously included on those course listings, and they had to kind of dig for that information or know the person to talk to. We also have things like advanced writing courses, practical skills courses, externships and clinics. These are things that you can now search for specifically without having to know what that is. A lot of students didn't know what was what, so this is making everyone's life a lot easier. Okay, so we'll get back to it. Scholarship and writing opportunities. This is the other example. Again, half of it was on the web, similar scenario, long list, very boring, a lot of room for error when you're editing. It was difficult. In this instance, there's a deadline for some of these. So we needed to remove the ones with a deadline. That became really difficult to keep up with, especially when the person who's updating this page, which is generally myself, doesn't know what the deadline is. I don't have the schedule. So unless somebody comes and tells me that needs to be removed, these often got left up for too long. That's another thing that Views is really excellent at, is filtering by date so that you can do a relative date, so that everything that's past now and in the future, everything in the past would be hidden. So that would be automatic, and that, again, would make us look better, so we don't look like we're out of date. So again, this is what the old version looked like. It's not really exciting. There wasn't a lot of room for a lot of information. We were kind of picking and choosing, depending on who was doing the input of this information, what would be that in that little paragraph for each scholarship. This also eliminated a lot of scholarships that we have that don't give you a link. If they don't have a web page, but you just get, a brochure in the mail about it, that didn't get put up. So we're leaving that out, which could be really helpful to students. Oops. All right. And the other version, the physical book, just so you see what a student would see, this is in the very bottom of the law school, next to a student affairs officer. Just in the dark corner, there's this notebook that very few people knew about. There was no really great way to get this information out to students. They would periodically, maybe every semester, share an email saying there's some new opportunities if you know where to go to find it. So again, this is just not the best way. And some of these, since some of them were scholarships, they were duplicated on that page, which is needless. And that's just not making this easy for students to find. So again, we'll do the after shot. And this is what it looks like now. So again, we knew that there were scholarship opportunities and there were writing opportunities. Some of them were geared towards prospective students. The web page version that you saw was just nested in the admissions section. So that was just for prospective students. Even though we have opportunities that are for both prospective and current, most of our writing competitions end up being for current students. So this list combines the two. You can search for writing competition and current students. You can also easily filter, now that this has its own content type, and I'll get into that in a second, you can easily filter by award amount, and you can do it by descending so that you get the highest awards first. And some students really like to go for the biggest bang for their buck. If they're going to spend a lot of time and submit something, they want to submit to the ones that are going to get them the most money. Some of these don't offer an actual award amount. They offer things like, a free trip to this conference, or there are some on here for prospective students that offer them like a pre-law program for free. So there's some room for leeway, and we've nested those at the bottom of this list so that they'll appear at the zero amount since there's not a dollar amount associated with it. And for these, instead of it being just a text list, this is what we have a full page for this information now. So now there's a place for the actual application form. There's a place for a PDF. If we got a brochure of this, we can scan it and put it in there and have a place for it so that students can always get to it. They don't have to make sure that person's office where that notebook lived is open for them to be able to go in and apply for an opportunity. All right, so now that I have showed you the two examples, the modules that you're going to need, if you like this before and after approach and you say, well, I've got a huge list of just stuff that's listed in my website. It's just one big content body, and I would like to make this sortable and filterable for people and make it easier for myself. These are what you're going to need. Most of us are probably already using Views, pretty standard. In Drupal 8, it's in the core, so you're not going to need it. Our site is in Drupal 7, so that is something that we have to install. Chaos tools. This is something that you're going to need that you may already be relying on for other modules. But chaos tools is going to be necessary for the views block exposed filter block. And I'll get into a minute why we chose to use that. Our site, now that we have done the upgrade, we have turned a lot of pages that we were previously using a whole lot of template files. That can get really messy, having a lot of tpl.php files in there. So we've cut back on the number of that, and we've started using our views instead of as a view page, they're view blocks. So now we're going to feed all those blocks into our page template so that we don't have to do extra theming, we don't have to worry about excessive template files. And so that's what the views block exposed filter block is going to do. If you just want to expose a block with content in a page, no problem. But if you're trying to expose the form where you can click to search and filter, you're going to need this module. So that's going to allow that to show up in a page. Then link, this is optional. This isn't actually necessary for doing this method, but we ended up using it in, it's the Scholarship and Writing Opportunities one. That is something that's built into Drupal 8 core, but not in 7. So that's going to give you a field for a link. And that's a pretty simple thing, but the majority of the content that I could see people using this for would include the link, so it's just something to think about. And then taxonomy, this is going to be in everybody's core, but this is how you're going to be able to create vocabularies for these new content types so that you can give lots of methods for people to filter. So how to do this. On the handouts, and if anybody came in since I mentioned the handouts, there's a little stack of handouts back in the corner. This how-to is listed out in the handout, but I'm going to walk you through the steps. So initially, we're going to create a new vocabulary, possibly more than one. Our course offerings, we are currently in the process of revising something we're calling course concentrations, just to help students if they want to go on the business law track, so that they know what courses are going to feed into that, or environmental law, or public interest. So that's something they're revising, that when we built this, I knew that they were working on that. So I've already created that vocabulary, even though we're not actively using it. And that would be one thing to think about. Try to think of all the possibilities of things that would help people sort these easier. You know, even if it's not something you can use now, but you see yourself using in the future, you could go ahead and create it and have a working template. And that way, in the future, when it does come into play, and this should come into play in a couple of weeks, we'll be able to easily just add that filter there, and that taxonomy is ready to go, and people can sort by just one more easy method. Create a new content type. That's going to be key. This way you can pull specific content for these views. You can also, instead of going into one page that is ridiculously long for having to go through and find that one course to update, you would be able to easily search for this. In Drupal, you go to Find Content, and you could search by that content type, and then you can also search just for that course, so that you only have to touch one node instead of having to scroll through that endless list I showed you. So it makes the content editor's job a lot easier. Then when a course goes off, which often happens, instead of having to go in again and touch that long, ridiculous list, you can just unpublish it. Adding the new vocabulary to the content type, that's going to enable tagging so that you can, for example, make a course a required course or make a course an elective. You're going to create some draft content. This is step number 4. I guess, you know, this is up to you how much draft content you want to create, but since I knew this was something that we were going to be using, I went ahead and when we were in development, I went ahead and made a copy of all of the courses, just so it would already be in there. It saved me a lot of time later when we actually did the upgrade. You create a new block view. I personally, whenever I'm creating a view, no matter what it is, I make a page version first, just because I prefer to have a working example that I can get in and look at, even before I go through all the steps of exposing it and replacing the old page. And this way I have a working example of the new version that I can compare to the old version before I make the switch. So again, this is totally optional to make a page view, and it's not actually a step, but I recommend doing a page view and a block view, just so you can test it out. One thing to keep in mind when you are making the views is that when you're making a view and you're creating something as a block and you go to expose that form, that form is going to disappear because it becomes a block. So then you can't test it in the view example below. That's another good reason to have the page view just for yourself, just to be able to test it out. Adding filters and sorts. This is something that this method relies on heavily. So again, just think of all the possibilities of whatever list you're transforming. How many ways could you envision somebody sorting it to make their life easier? So for the scholarship and award opportunities, award amount made a lot of sense to me. I got with the other staff members who were in charge of those lists and said, what do students come to you and ask for? And they gave me a great list of the things. Deadline was one of those. We wanted them to be able to sort by what's coming up next so that they don't miss a deadline. So just get with people and figure that out. Decide if you want to link your content back to the original, and if you want a pager. These lists are super long for us, so a pager was definitely necessary. That was one way that I was able to get people to agree with me on switching to this because, people don't have to scroll endlessly, so everybody likes that. Exposing the form of your new block as a second block. This is what that views block filter module is going to do for you. It's going to allow you to make that a separate block so that it can be visible in a page template that already exists, instead of having to make new TPLs. When you're ready, transforming your old HTML list into a mostly empty page, and then when you're really ready, adding that block of the view and the block of the form to that page. Keeping that old page there, I really like, and my colleagues liked, being able to have that page where they can still go in and edit the description for that page, and so that that page's URL doesn't change. We tried to keep all of our URLs the same as much as possible when we did our upgrades, so that students who were already used to going to a place don't have to go to a new one, and so that we have less changes to make throughout the site where we're linking to it from. So I'm going to walk you through some of these steps, giving you the examples that we used. So again, course offerings. I created 2 new vocabularies for these. The course clusters, which I mentioned, which we're not currently using, but we're about to. And our course types, those were things that I got from the registrar herself. We said, how many ways do you think a student would look for these types of courses? So right off the bat, there's required, elective, advanced writing is one that we have, practical skills, and clinics. And then we were able to come up with a few more as well. And you can see here, these are our course types currently. And then we also have different types for those extra degree types, so that those students can search for just what they want. Then for the opportunities page, we have opportunity type and student type. There's only 2 of these, but it's still very important for these students to be able to search by either or for those. Creating your new content type. Just to give you a snapshot of what we used for the new content types for each of these, there were a couple of things that each of them needed just for the basics. So for a course offering, the typical thing would include a title, a jury number, which is our course number, credit hours, and a course description. We're also going to have the 2 vocabulary types at the bottom just for them to sort with. And then some courses include a prerequisite and a co-requisite. So those are fields that we added that aren't required, but that are going to help students to see a quick snapshot in that view of what they need if they want to take that course, if it has a prerequisite. For opportunities, we have title, deadline, if it's annual or not. That's something to help myself where I can go in and see as an editor if, and this is something that the public can't see, but see if this opportunity needs to be deleted annually, or if I can leave it up and just update the deadline. So that's something that's making my job easier. And you want to think about that too. If you're going to revise it, you're not just thinking about the end user and making it easier for them, but you want to make it easier for yourself or for whoever is going to edit this. Award amount and sort award amount. So for award amount, as I mentioned, some of our awards aren't just They aren't just monetary. So that needed to be an area that's more like a body section, where you can put in, symbols, you could put in a line if it's just something that they're going to gain. Then I wanted a sort award amount. This isn't visible to the public, but this is used by the view to do that sorting of if an award is more than another. So that way you can view all of the ones that are going to give you $5,000 before you view some that are going to give you $50,000. Website link. Most of our opportunities have a web address, so that makes it easy to put that in for them. And that's going to use that link field that I talked about that's in the modules list. Application, that's going to use the link field as well. A lot of these PDFs. Others, they have an online application. So either way, it helps to use that. And we have many of these sorted in the display for this so that if it's an empty field, it's not going to show. So if there's not an online application, that's not going to show to somebody. It's not going to look like something's missing. Opportunity description, pretty necessary so people know what it's about, all the information, maybe what they need to submit something. And then we have our 2 vocabulary types at the bottom for tagging, either opportunity type or student type. So step 4, creating some draft content. For course offerings, this would be an example of one of our courses. You've got your description, your credit hours, your jury number. This one did not require a prerequisite or a co-requisite, so you see that doesn't show in the view. And then you've got your course types. And the other thing that this is going to make easier is finding content. I know I said this before, but it never hurts. One benefit to making this material its own content type is the ease of finding it yourself later and the ease of updating just one thing instead of a huge list. Steps 5 through 8. You're going to set up your new views. Creating a new view, most of us hopefully have used views before, so you know what to do when you go in to create a view. You want to include fields for this. I don't like using teasers because that doesn't give me quite as much control over what's going to show and what's not. So I really recommend using fields for this and pulling from the fields that you've got in your new content types. You can also decide on the display format style. In both of these examples, I'm just using HTML list in case you're curious. My other favorite one that I played around with was the table view, and that looks really nice, and it gives you, kind of an alternate striping for gray and white, and some people really like the way that looks. We use that view a lot for like our news and events feeds. Next, step 6, you're going to use filters and sorts to make the view easily searchable. This is where you're going to pull in those vocabularies. This is where you're going to expose this filter or sort so that people can actually edit it themselves. You don't have to expose all filters and sorts. One of those that I do not expose is by date. So on that scholarship and writing opportunities page, there's a sort in there just for the relative date so that I can hide everything that's in the past so that students aren't going to see something that's a past deadline. They can still sort by deadline, but ones that are in the past won't show up, if that makes sense. Step 7, you're going to decide if you want to link back to the original content or not, or if you're going to use a pager. Course offerings, we don't want them to see those ugly course things. They're going to get everything they need in the view. For scholarship and writing opportunities, it would be a lot of space if we showed all the stuff in those pages. So those, we are linking back to the content so that they can get the full description. So again, that's up to you. Depends on what content you're linking to. We chose to do it for one, but not for the other. It's all going to depend on how the end view is going to be for your end user. Pager, we use a pager for both of them. I recommend that if it's a long list. That's one of the benefits of doing this method is that you can page it and not, waste people's time scrolling endlessly because nobody enjoys that. Step 8, you're going to expose the form for your new block. And this is the part where that module comes in. This is maybe the most important aspect. It's really simple, but it took me a while to figure it out. So I'm going to give you a snapshot of this, where these things are. If you're not familiar with views, you're going to set up your format, your fields, your filters, and your sorts. Your pager settings are going to be in the center. And then you're going to expose your form over here where it says exposed form. That's going to appear when you enable that expose view filter module. That doesn't exist until you enable that. You're going to change that to yes, and then you're going to turn on Ajax. And that's where those chaos tools come in, because without Ajax on, you're going to think, what did I do wrong? This isn't working. Is that lady crazy? So make sure you have Ajax on. That was a roadblock that I hit that I thought I must have done something wrong, and there it is. And then it works, presto. Same thing, this is the opportunity snapshot. You can see that the fields and the filters and sorts are a little bit different, but the same goes for the exposed form and the turn on the Ajax. Those are crucial into making this work and feeding it into a page that already exists. So step 9, preparing the old page for a new view. This is a pretty simple process. Go in, wipe out all the stuff that was ugly. Make sure you save a backup. I get in the habit of making an unpublished page and adding the dash old to the end of the URL and copying everything over there just in case I missed something or there's content that I forgot to put in. That way you've got a backup, but wipe everything out, preparing your new page for the content. I like to keep a little description up there. Description isn't necessary. Then you're going to finally locate these blocks, move them to the correct region, set the page and title. So here you can see your block list. It can get pretty long. The main thing to remember is that you want this to appear below your main page content because that's where that description of the page is going to show up. So you want your description, then you want your form. So for course offerings, we've got our exposed form, then course offerings, and for scholarship and opportunities, exposed form, then the view. So that way, and that's a preference of mine, I want people to be able to see how they can sort before they scroll down the list. You could do it the other way, but I think that makes sense for the end user. Set the page and the title. So this is important. You'll go to your home page and see that this has been added to every single page of your website. So you want to go in, you want to make sure that you've set this only to be on the pages listed, and then put in the URL of that page. And another thing that it took me a while to figure out, why is there an extra title showing up? Put in none as your title, and I've added that on the handout as well, I think. But that's something to remember so that you don't have duplicate titles showing up. Nobody likes a page that doesn't look like a page, but looks like chunky sections. So take out that title. You'll still be able to see your title in your admin view. You'll be able to find it, but the people won't have to see the ugly title of your view. And then review your finished page. And again, this is sort of a bigger snapshot of the full page of that scholarship and writing opportunities. But it's a lot cleaner, and it's a lot prettier, and it's a lot more user-friendly than the version that I showed you at the beginning. Some general tips. Be enthusiastic. It is contagious. When I first went to some colleagues who were using this, who were used to, inputting these long strings and having to go back and forth because they kept, they missed one letter and a professor would complain. Those were really long lists, and it's easy to get lost in that information. So, it always helps to be enthusiastic and find those people who this is going to make their life easier. So, the couple of colleagues who were responsible for this information, when I show them this method, just a draft, in our development server, they were jumping for joy. This is going to make their lives easier. They're going to have less questions from students. It gives them the ability to spend less time with the web and more time doing what they need to be doing, which is talking to students. Prepare a complete working draft. As I said, we made a full draft in a development server, of course, before we did our switch with our upgrade. So if you don't have a development server, you could always, just make a duplicate version and have it hidden from people. Keep it unpublished until you're ready, but it always helps to have, a duplicate so that you can use that to shop it around to people at the school and say, check this out, do you have some Do you have some stuff on the site that could benefit from this? And chances are, higher education, any education site, we've got long lists, and these people, they like their lists. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy for people to use. So, see how you can transform that into something that's easier for people. And making the case, in addition to using those things, just keep in mind that and remind people that this is going to be more efficient for them, for the students, for the faculty. It's going to be more efficient for you, the web editor. It's also going to make searching and updating this information infinitely easier and faster for everybody. And then there's a potential for marketing this. So we did not publicize those pages before. You can see why. They were pretty ugly pages. They were terrible to use. Nobody enjoyed using them, including the people who created the pages. So now these pages are kind of snazzy. People know that there's a difference. They notice that it's easy to use. And now we can market this, even the course offerings, which we weren't previously marketing to prospective students. We're now using that on our admissions pages to say, you can find your interests here, check out the courses we offer. Search, and it's easy for students to go in and search. So an example of this, we have this is a snapshot from our admissions page. So that circle up there is where we've plugged into our call-out section a block that's taking students to the course offerings. So this way, prospective students can see what we have to offer, and we're not ashamed of the way it looks. That's just sort of a close-up of that. So, any questions?
Sorry to ask this, but is there meaning I should make of this, or is this just a cool graphic?
It's just a cool graphic. Yeah. As I mentioned at the beginning, I like synthesizers. It's really easy for me to visualize Drupal and its modules as sound, and how they can all be interconnected and used together is really fascinating to me. So that's what the graphic is sort of my visualization of this method, plugging all these things in together and coming up with something new.
You made it?
Yeah, I do that one.
So, yeah, how do you import the data, I probably missed the introduction, the data to the content type?
I'm sorry?
You created a new content type, but how do you move the content in that content type?
That is a good question. Since I did all of this in a development server and we had all summer to do this, I did all of that by hand, personally.
Copy and paste?
I copy and paste. Crazy copy and paste. It took me a long time. I will admit it was the least fun part of the whole process. But in the end, it was worth it. Because once it's up and running, unless this is content you plan to change often, with our course offerings, that's not the case. Most of these do stick around for a long time. We make little edits to the description, but the majority of it stays the same. So copy and paste worked for me. There may be a way to move that over. I'm unsure. We did use the migration module for most of our content, but to my knowledge, that would only work really well if you are moving this from one content type to the next and those fields are the same. Because this is a new content type, that wasn't an option for me. You're welcome. Did you have one?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Are the rest of the colleges on campus, are they implementing Drupal 7 for catalogs?
It's all over the place. A lot of them, it's such a big university that a lot of people choose to use different ones. Franklin College of Arts and Sciences is pretty large. They've got a lot of different schools underneath them, and they're all using Drupal, but they all are separate sites. So I'm unaware of how that works. I do know that the main library is about to make the jump from just a slew of HTML pages to Drupal, and I feel like the lady who's doing that is here today, but probably in a different session. So
the campus standard is actually Expression Engine, at least for the main site and other sites, but
yeah, Terry College of Business, I think, is using Expression Engine too.
So sorry to hear that.
There's a lot of sites using Drupal. I've done tons of different universities.
Georgia Tech uses Dreamweaver.
yeah,
I just had to do it for years, like 1,200 pages in there. There's some scripts built in, but it took me 6 months to do it. Yes. It was a nightmare.
You work there?
I don't know.
That's what happens.
No, but
That's
we're
what
talking.
happens at the North Avenue Trade.
Yeah, I know, it's kind of crazy. They were thinking about going with a third-party vendor. That's what we just need to rebuild the group. Obviously, you can do it, but you got to get the buy-in from a lot of people for the whole campus.
I built something just like this recently, and the Ajax button got roadblocked. I was like,
Yeah.
I can figure it out.
I know, I did a lot of Googling, what did I do wrong? This should be working, and I found it, 20 comments down. That was the solution, and I had forgotten to turn that on. So
I also made one with a media library where if you upload like an image or a logo, people could go retrieve it and search for them. But the problem with being a media library, like images are just images, they're not nodes. So when we tried to like pull a thumbnail image out and put it in the view, there was no thumbnail field available. And we ended up having to do a hack. We never figured out how to actually do it right because we didn't want to make it a node because it wasn't like the right thing to do. But
I haven't done it with media libraries. That would be an interesting one. We do
it's
use
kind of like an entity, like or an image is like it's not a node or anything. It's just in Drupal,
We do a lot of, when I mentioned our news and events pages, we have lots of like news feeds. The news page often pulls in, a picture of what we call faculty highlight, where it's got a picture of the professor from their profile. But because that is already, there is a staff profile content type, we've got those images are a part, of a content type, so we're able to pull the thumbnails and everything. I don't think we're using media libraries at all on our site.
Have y'all done any integration from like an external source like I was talking about earlier?
I don't think so. Not to my knowledge. I'm not the only web developer, though, so our other web developer is at the responsive session. So she could answer that question better than I could. I don't really deal with the database end of it and migrating content as much as I deal with theming it and doing views. Views has been like a big portion of what I did for the upgrade, so. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you for coming, and if you didn't get a handout, please feel free to pick one up.